There we go. We're streaming now on YouTube too. But I could not for the life of me go to sleep. And I finally went to sleep at like 4 a.m. And then my stupid body was like, hey, butthole, I'm not going to let you sleep. You're going to wake up at like 7:45 and just lounge in bed for an hour because you can't go back to sleep. So I am like super duper duper tired. And I'm still got to go and work on the track after this.
No.
So if I sound like I'm at a loss for words, or if I'm just, not here, that's why. It's not.
It's because you're not there. All there.
Holy crap! Yeah. Like it just hit me too driving.
I have a headache.
Oh, I'm sorry, Will.
Well, I don't have hands. So.
Okay, I'll introduce.
I always have to.
I know. I'll introduce us here. So, hey guys, this is Alex Sturgeon with the Hobbytown HobbyPlex, here to lead us in for the HobbyPlex Show podcast, sponsored by Pivot Lending. Of course, if you let them know, pivotlending.com, and get a hold of Don Zoller, you can get yourself, and you get something going with them, you can get yourself $500 lender credit or 0.125 off of your rate at whatever you guys are in there for. So either like a home loan or refinance, something like that. And we have had some takers, so that's good. We talked about that on the previous podcast, so we won't worry about it too much here. But I'd like to introduce my buddy, Will Brinton.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Will Brinton.
Will.
He's Will.
I'm Will Brinton.
And we're going to do it again. So we're going to have a guest. And this time I thought we were going to lead in. We always try to lead in with some sort of hobby news, right? And the last couple of months, there really hasn't been any because nobody's been doing anything. So
the pandemic and all.
Yeah, pandemic and all. But it was announced last week that TLR has kind of broken up some of their team manager duties into regions. And one of those team managers is Zeke. And it's Zeke Bollinger. And we've got him on the show. And I'm really happy.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Pleasure's all Alex's.
Yeah.
Mine too.
That was
right.
that was an Associated versus Losi joke. I get it.
Yep. We like to have fun here.
We like to have fun here.
Oh, for sure.
So what I'd like to do is just kind of, Zeke, I'd like you to just kind of introduce yourself, and you can kind of go over a little bit of your history and stuff. How long you've been racing, where you're from, what do you do for a living, maybe even how old you are if you want to give that out. And then we'll start popping you with questions about how this new gig is going to work and other stuff that we'd like to go over. We'll talk about racing too, because that's always fun, because that's why we're here. But go ahead, take over.
Okay. So my name is Zeke Ballinger. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. 31 years old. I raced for about a year and a half or so, starting back in 2010. Then I got married and started doing that kind of stuff and actually stopped racing. It was just a hobby for me in that period of time. And then 2014-15 time period, I actually got a divorce and had a bunch of free time on my hands and kind of got back into racing. That's really when I fell in love with it and started putting a lot of time and effort into it. I ran for Associated for a few years, and then about 2.5 years ago went ahead and switched over to TLR. And yeah, I usually run 2 or 3 times a week and really just enjoy it for sure.
And you run it more, right? Mostly? Yeah. Is that kind of your gig?
Yep, Moores are definitely my home track. The worst part is it's about hour 25-minute drive, so it's a trek, and that corridor now, the one main highway is pretty construction filled right now. So there are nights on that I come home and it's one lane for 40 miles, and it takes like 2.5 hours to get home. So that's the worst part is the drive to and from the track for sure.
You do some 8-scale stuff too, right?
Yeah.
And that's
most of my 8-scale stuff I kind of stick locally. I don't really do a whole lot of traveling for the 8-scale.
Is the track?
I'm definitely a Nitro guy.
Is the track that held the 2000? Is it 10 or 11 Nats still out there on the very, very east side of Colorado? Okay, or Colorado Springs.
It's not.
Okay.
It's sad. That was actually one of my favorite tracks. I really enjoyed that place.
It was a cool track. It was kind of like ours. You had this really tall driver stand, and then a level, and then it just kind of went downhill at an angle. It took a little bit of getting used to, but it was pretty close to ours. As far as
the best part about that track was because it went away at an angle. Is Colorado weather is really like bipolar. It could be 80 degrees and sunny at 1:30, rainy at 2:30, and then sunny at 3:30. And so it would dry out super fast. All the water would go off, and we could get back to racing no matter how big the storm was.
Every day at like 3 o'clock out there for the Nats when it was there. I think it was 2010, but maybe I don't know. All the years blur together now. But every day at 3 o'clock, it would rain or get like crazy windy all of a sudden. And it would last for like a half hour, and then everything was fine after that.
Yeah, the wind is why a lot of us have trailers.
Mm-hmm.
You buy enough $200 easy ups, you can just buy a trailer and not have to worry about any of your stuff blowing away.
I remember that about Moore too, though. I was at Moore in 1998 for the Stock Nats, and almost every day there, like 2:30, 3 o'clock, something crazy would happen with the weather. And I remember it did rain, and it was the track just like it was dry within like an hour. It was nuts. That was a big outdoor.
So we don't really. It seems like our tracks don't get very saturated.
Yeah,
they usually are able to dry out pretty quick.
So let's see. Where can I start off on? So you race more most of the time. That's where you travel with 10 scale. You get the opportunity then to race with guys like Dustin Evans. Is that right?
Yep.
And does Chambers still race right now? He's kind of
a little bit.
He's kind of been off and on the grid a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's busy with life and that type of thing. And
who else?
I see him more often at the 8 scale tracks, I think.
Yeah. Who else is well, he's got an S-Work sponsorship, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But who else? Who's fast at Moore right now? Besides yourself?
I would say we've got Dustin, obviously,
right.
And then me, and then Zach Gastelum.
Oh yeah, forgot about Zach. How could I forget about Zach?
And me and Zach are usually the two that are really pushing Dustin. You know, if we could go that good on a regular basis away from home, it would be fun. Kind of got that home track hero thing going on.
Yeah.
You know, where you're always faster at your home track where you got 50,000 laps on.
Yeah.
And then we've got another. Right? You just need to travel more, Will. You need to get out.
I know. I used to travel a little. But...
I've kind of changed my thinking on the way that I travel to races about 2.5, 3 years ago, and I actually enjoy traveling much more now.
Sure.
So I go for the races that I'll have the most fun at. Where I know that like a bunch of us are going, or like I'm pretty good friends with Frank, and so if I know that he's going to a race, like that's a plus because I know that away from the track we're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
And so just trying to focus on the enjoyment of it.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, man. Like you can't be fixated on results all the time. You know, it's not what for I mean guys like me. I mean it's more about having a good time with your friends and making your car work good and trying to put clean runs in. And if you get a podium or make the main, that's a bonus, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely I have that same outlook on traveling now, which is why I don't travel a lot anymore for RC car racing. I might do it once a year, but it's got to be something really special or something that I wanted to go to for a while now. Otherwise, I'm like, I'd rather travel to something, family related, like camping or mountain biking or something like that,
Yeah, it's real funny that, now that I've got this RTM position with TLRs, because I had already kind of made the decision towards the end of last year I was already committed to go to nationals, and so that's why I didn't get to make it out to Omaha very much last year. Actually didn't make it to Omaha last year, which was kind of a bummer, because there was always like an 8-scale race the same weekend that the Associated Series was going on out there, and then nationals. I mean, that's anytime you go to nationals, you just might as well just plan on $1,000-$1,500.
Yeah.
You know, by the time you do 5-6 days of hotel, so
that's a low ball too. That's
I know.
Yeah.
And so we usually try and split it. You know, I always try and go with someone to make it more affordable, but it's still, you know, to feel like that's the thing. I won't go to a race unless I feel like I'm prepared, because with my arms, I can't accomplish as much wrenching or gluing or any of that stuff at the race. So if it's a week out and I already feel stressed out about getting stuff done and feeling like I'm going to show up unprepared, I usually just don't go, because usually when I feel like I'm unprepared, that's usually when I'm, you know, I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball, then I don't enjoy myself, and then I kick myself in the butt all weekend.
Yeah.
And so that's usually just like a sign, like, all right, let's just not do this one. But this year I was just going to kind of stay in my, you know, my bordering states. I was signed up for your guys' spring race, which is unfortunately canceled. I was going to do April Fools. You know, I was just going to try and do all the races. You know, instead of doing $2, $3, $1,000 races, I was going to do $5, $6, $500 races, and just kind of stay close to home, drive to races, but of course this whole pandemic thing kind of shut everything down. So
let me ask you about that. Well, 2 things. So for those of the audience that are watching this right now or that are going to listen to this, explain what your what the deal is with your arms. Like
okay.
What,
so,
you know.
So basically I've got 2, it's called amniotic band syndrome. So essentially I was just born without arms just above the elbows. And it's one of a million thing. My mom could have had, you know, 10 more children, and most likely they would have all been just fine. And the way that it was explained to me is that I basically just grew faster than my mom's womb could expand, and ended up getting tangled. And, you know, I lost 2 toes, and I lost my arms because they basically just got tangled and pinched off in the very early stages of growing. So
in the umbilical cord
thing. No, it's actually, they're called amniotic hairs.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of like little fibers on the inside of the womb. And I grew so fast that I basically got tangled in the hairs.
Oh, okay. I know. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
At least that's how it was explained to me.
Right.
I've actually never really took the time to like really look up exactly why and how, because it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to change. Like, so yeah, but that's just kind of how it was explained to me when I was little.
I think you've proven that it doesn't matter, because you drive phenomenally and you do it with no hands. Like, that's amazing to me. The first time I saw you, I got to be honest, I was like, what the and then I'm like, you know, would talk to you and stuff, and you don't even let it be a thing, you know? That's and it's cool.
Yeah, you know, you're my hero, man.
Well, I appreciate that, Will. And I know I always like to give you a hard time, but because I know
somebody's got to.
Well, you're honestly, you know, we go to tracks and race all over the country at one point or another in this like crazy, call it a, you know, career for lack of a better term, right? Like your racing career, however long you like really take it serious. We all go to races, and like you meet people that are like genuinely good people, like, and that was when I met you at the HobbyPlex the first time. You know, you immediately came over and was just like, "Hey, dude, here's sauce. Let me know if you need help." Like, I'm like, I had been in the building for like 4 minutes, and you were instantly just one of those people that, you know, just you kind of remember. So, yeah,
thanks,
so
man.
that's why
made my day.
That's why you've immediately locked yourself into getting a lifetime of getting teased by me.
Sure, I'll take it. Yeah, I know it's an endearing, you know, way of getting made fun of or whatever. Like, you know, we give each other a hard time.
You got to undo the nice. Yeah, you got to undo the nice with a little bit of teasing.
Yeah. Well,
it's like what I do to the Pavlos.
I would have thought you didn't like me, you know.
It's like what I do to the Pavlos.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
I hope the Pavlos know I'm never serious when I'm actually just ragging on Mitchell the whole time.
I remember one time we were standing up there on the driver's stand and Mitchell was starting right behind me in 4-wheel, and I said, I was like, if you take me out in the first corner again, I'm throwing you off the driver's stand. I think he thought I was serious. He didn't take me out. So Mitchell, we call him the missile.
I want to say it was the Roar Nationals 2 years ago, when it was at the HobbyPlex. Or not the HobbyPlex, Hobby Action.
Okay.
And it was the 2-wheel drive main. I want to say it was like the C main, or I think I made both Bs. No, I missed both Bs. So it was the C main, and Joe Bornhorst is standing next to me on the driver's stand, and I had known Joe a little bit, but never quite. Like when I start messing with you, like I'll try and pull out a couple good arm jokes, because like you can only get people really good so many times. You only get the shock factor. And so we're lining up on the grid, and I look over and I look Joe right in the eyes, and I go, "You ever lose to an armless guy before?" And he just turns red and just starts laughing. And so at the end of the race, he looks over and he's like, "You almost got me. I was nervous the whole time that you were going to get me, and I was going to get more of a tongue lashing, like you're going to give you some ammo."
Yeah. Head games, man. You gotta get the head game started.
It's fun. It's all a good fun.
Yeah. RC is very mental.
Yeah, it is. I had no mental structure on Saturday. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
It's tough. I mean, I don't know. You guys were always able to kind of run, right? You never got fully shut down up there?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about more, and just this Colorado scene in general. The store has been open the whole time, and we have been busier than Christmas the last 3 months, which is crazy. And the thing was we were kind of that way before. In February we were really busy too, but it just went up to a whole new level these last 3 months, and it hasn't really stopped, right? The track, we shut it down. We shut racing down mainly for liability reasons. So we probably could have tried to club race, but if somebody would have gotten sick and they traced it to us, then I think the owner was really worried about how that would go liability wise. And so we shut racing down, and then we only allowed 10 people to practice at a time, and we had the pit spots spaced like way out from one another. So we did everything we could to allow people to at least get some practice time in. And actually, we've sold more practice passes in the month of April than we ever have, and that's because half of April is spent sometimes building a track, which is what I'm doing right now. I got to run a little bit. I ran my 5.0 Elite that I have once or twice. When I had to get it set back to dirt, and I ran it once or twice, but that's about it. I've actually been running my crawler more than my actual RC car, but I've still been doing stuff, Will hasn't done anything. Hadn't done anything.
Yeah, so our carpet series, the Syndicate, I'd wrapped that up in the first 6 races. So I ran I ran one more after that, and then I took the next one off. And then, because I was like, well, I haven't had a break, like a weekend off from racing in like a year. So I was like, I got scooter stuff I want to do and some other things around the house I want to do. I'm going to do that Saturday. And then the next weekend was the Techno Series, and then which is 8 scale for people that don't know. And then the next weekend we'd gotten shut down, or that's when the pandemic started.
Yep.
So I had not raced since late February. And or I hadn't driven since late February until we started racing on dirt again. Then we raced on dirt again. I hadn't raced on dirt since I was in St. Louis in February.
Yeah.
So it's been a hot minute, and I feel kind of behind the 8 ball, but I'm getting back to speed here, I think.
So how bad was it in Colorado? Did everything everything got shut down for a little while, didn't it? I was trying to keep track of more what Chad was doing.
Yeah, I want to say Chad was shut down to where it was no practicing, curbside pickup only type of situation for somewhere in that 5 to 6 weeks period.
Oof.
And I didn't drive an RC car for, I think it was 8 weeks. So when everything started happening and I started seeing all the country shut down and races started getting canceled, you know, I think everyone has their view on this whole pandemic. And at first, I think I definitely played it on the safer side. I'm like, well, if we're not going to any races anytime soon, it's really dumb for me to go up there and surround myself with a bunch of people. Like, I stopped racing probably a week or two before I necessarily had to, or, you know, practicing.
Right.
Because the gatherings of more than 10 were shut down at first, and then they kind of shut everything down. We got a stay-at-home order. So technically, you were only allowed to leave the house if you were going out for an essential reason, grocery shopping, going to the doctor, that type of thing. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago, at the beginning of May, they relaxed some of the guidelines, and now we're kind of back to no more than a gathering larger than 10 type situation.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to run a little bit, mostly practice days. Saturday was my first, I guess you could say, real race day. And it wasn't, so what they kind of did like a condensed format where they ran 8-scale e-buggy in the morning for 4 hours. And it was 3 heats, or 3 rounds, and then AAAs. And it was basically, you know, 2 5-people groups. So one group was racing and one people would marshal. Then you would switch, and then that would be a whole round. And then there would be like a 10 or 15-minute break. And then they did Nitro in the afternoon.
And that was outside at your local Nitro track down there in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, that's actually up in Longmont, so it's even farther away from me.
Yeah, I know where that's at. That's north, right? North of Denver?
Yeah. It's about an hour north of Moore.
Yeah.
And so it's about a 2.5-hour drive for me from start to finish. But the track is dialed.
Yeah, looks really good.
You know, when you have a place that's really good, and every time you go, he's out there watering, fixing the jump bases, blowing it off, like, it makes the drive worth it. You know what I mean? Like, every time you go, I've never been up there and be like, man, the track was really rough today, or that type of thing. So he puts a lot of effort in, so we try and support him as much as we can. But so that was like my first real race day. And I feel like I'm driving really well, but the mental game, you know, where you kind of slip into that 30 seconds of thinking about how you're driving, or, you know, for me, I can't think and drive. Like, I can't be thinking about outside stuff like, my car could use grip here, or I could use steering there, or, you know, that type of thing. When your brain starts thinking about other stuff, you start getting sloppy. And definitely had a few heats where I had like that like crap 30 seconds where, like, why am I thinking about stuff that does not matter right now? But I haven't had lack of being it.
Yeah, I haven't had I call it unconscious driving. I haven't had like the unconscious driving since I've been back, like where you're just doing it and not even thinking about it, and it's like the whole run just turns into a blur. But But I haven't had that since I've been back.
My Saturday
I know, right?
My Saturday was basically a blur in the bad way.
Yeah. Normally, like, I can just start pushing, and I just, like, can turn it on and off. Like, I was getting to that point, especially on carpet. But, this whole, the last 2 weeks, I just haven't gotten into that unconscious driving yet. But I think I'll get it back. I just need to practice more.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna run to the bathroom. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. Well, with that, this is probably the earliest time that we'll actually do a break for pivotlending.com and let either Don Zoller or David Olson get you caught up with whatever they need to get you caught up on. There, that's a nice little pause. I got the thumbs up from my sister. So we edit the edit. So Pivot Lending's paying for the podcast, and so so we got to like we come in every month or so and we talk about stuff, and we gather what's that? We get content, and then we splice it up, and then we splice it into the show, and it as like an ad.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's either that or I have to read off a script like Ben Shapiro, and I don't want to do that. So,
no.
We'll talk when Will gets back. We'll talk about your position. I want to talk about that. It's cool.
Okay.
So, okay, so let's get into it. So, one of the reasons why I want to get you on is because you are now one of TLR's regional team managers, and I wanted to ask you some questions about that, what that means, and I'd also like to find out how you kind of dropped into that and stuff. So, first off, your states cover most of the mountain states, but it also includes Nebraska, does it not?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And if I remember correctly from the first time I talked to Thomas about it, Nebraska and Wyoming were not supposed to be part of mine. And I definitely pushed and asked for that area. And the map had several versions where they were trying to figure out what was best and that type of thing. And so I enjoy coming up there. And so I definitely would like to have Nebraska's kind of in my region type situation.
Yeah, it's kind of it. When I saw the maps, I'm like, okay, I can understand that. And then I looked at it again, and I'm like, oh crap! Like they split Nebraska and Iowa, and it's weird. It was kind of weird to me because I always think of Region 8 when I think of regions. Like Roar is Region 8, and that's Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, right? And I think Corey Richardson has Iowa. And then it splits over to you for Nebraska, and I was like, okay, well that either way, it's a cool deal because basically, full disclosure, I was a TLR driver until 2017, and I decided to go privateer mainly because I was just bored, and I wanted to drive other cars without having some jerk face at the track going, oh ho ho, I'm going to get video of you and send it to your team manager. So, so I bailed on that regard, but, you had I always kill his last name, but Kevin Gahan was the team manager. And a lot of times it was difficult to get a hold of people because you got one guy trying to manage this entire country, and you've got, I'm sure in that position, you got people pulling you from every single direction, trying to get stuff or trying to get information or trying to work themselves up the ladder so they can get, more off or whatever, or a better quarterly deal or whatever it is. And then you look at the associated model, and they have had regional managers for a long time. And Brent Thelke's kind of in charge of the national team, which is a core group of it's a smaller team. And then you've got the regional managers that take care of everybody else. And I think, obviously, this is a product of Thomas coming on, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the idea had maybe been there for a little bit. I know that I reached out probably 6 or 8 months into me being on TLR and actually sent an email to Todd and Kevin and saying, hey, like, this is kind of how it was done in the past. And it's not that anybody's doing a bad job. It's just, I couldn't imagine. I mean, I know how much my phone's been going off since last Monday.
Right.
I couldn't imagine that for the entire country, and how many emails from team drivers about, hey, my credit card is no longer active. And, all of those type of things, just how busy it is for one guy, let alone trying to run a national level team and book hotels for Dakota and do those type of things. It's just too much for one person. And I think that when Thomas came aboard, that was his first thing that he wanted to accomplish is, we got to have better communication skills within the team. there were some areas that we could improve on, and that was his first thing that he really wanted to kind of lock down and then move on and attack some other stuff that he wants to go about.
Yeah, a lot of that is making sure that maybe the smaller guys get the attention they need too, and that's very important.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, it's hard for one guy to do it. So like if you have, and maybe the reason why they didn't have it is because at one time, like, wasn't the race team kind of shrunk down to where there wasn't a lot of regional drivers, and maybe they didn't have the need for it. Now, like, they're kind of building. TLR's built their team back up to the point that they probably needed this infrastructure within their race team to make sure everybody's getting taken care of and what they needed. And it was kind of like, not to say it blew up in their face, but maybe it grew a little faster than they anticipated. And it makes sense. It's kind of the model a lot of teams have.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that TLR, in a way, kind of had a little bit of this going. They called it team ambassadors.
Yeah.
And so Corey Richardson had been a team ambassador for a while.
Jose was one too.
Jose, and then Jeff Kaufman was also kind of doing that role up in the New York area, just trying to be an extra set of eyes for Kevin, going to races and just helping with support. And they all, kind of had their area. And so a lot of people didn't know that they were kind of in that role or what necessarily team ambassador was. And that's kind of why Thomas wanted to change the name and bring on, more of a structure to where, what is a team ambassador? But regional team manager, is very clear in the title.
Mm-hmm.
For someone that's maybe new to the hobby or new to the racing side, like, it's much more clear of what, what my role is.
I think the term ambassador, this is just coming from me thinking off the cuff here, but I think ambassador was kind of a buzzword for a while, because you've got like the Subaru ambassadors who like carry around some Subaru, trinkets or whatever, and if they see somebody driving a Subaru, they're supposed to like say, "Hey, what's up? Hey, this is coming from Subaru. I'm a Subaru ambassador." Or what they do is they come in and they go, "I'm a Subaru ambassador." Sorry, but that's kind of like,
That's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. But I thought ambassador, when I heard that term starting to be used in the RC world, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. So instead of being a sponsor driver, they're going to start calling them ambassadors. That's kind of where I was thinking that was going to go. So I'm kind of happy that at least the guys that were getting called ambassadors are now actually team managers, like they're supposed to be.
Yeah. and for me, when I hear ambassador, I think of someone who doesn't race, right? Like,
yeah. It's just
like
a weird term.
Supercross rider. Like, like you sign a professional supercross rider, he's an ambassador. He's not a sponsored driver. They may put a sticker on the bike, and he may have a trophy truck or a fifth scale in the pit at races. Like that, to me, that's what an ambassador would be. And so I think the name is definitely more fitting.
And I'm not trying to like...
It's more... to me, ambassador means promoter.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
And
I'm not trying to like crap on the word or the name ambassador. So hopefully anybody listening to this that's a higher up in Horizon Hobby or something like that doesn't think
It's not called ambassador anymore, right? Just to be clear?
No.
It's manager? All right, so ambassador was a bad word for it, and it doesn't make sense. So. Good job changing it, TLR. I'll say it. It was a bad idea.
Okay. So with that, obviously you're now managing a smaller group of people from these different states, and can you also kind of like recruit?
Yeah, we can. I don't necessarily like the term recruit. I'm not looking. So I'm going to talk about, I guess, my region in particular.
Yeah, go for it.
So I got this past week after everything got announced, we kind of got lists of all the drivers and what states they live in and that type of thing. And after going through my list and marking off the people that, hasn't raced in 2 years, currently races for another team, bought X, Y, or Z and is just running something like decided to go privateer. I have 7 states and had 8 drivers.
Yeah.
And the majority of them, I guess, were here in Colorado, because other than Omaha, I think that those are probably the 2 strongest racing scenes.
Yeah.
You don't hear a lot of racing in North Dakota, and so there's no need for 12 guys or that type of thing. For me, yeah, I definitely want people, kind of spread out. And something that I did, and I actually haven't reached out to you because I knew I was coming on, and I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what your racing scene is up there from traveling up there. But every track that I had never heard of before or never kind of went to before, I actually reached out to every track owner in my region to find out what their racing scene was like, whether or not they had a hobby shop at the track or even off-site, to determine if I sponsor somebody here or sponsor 2 guys here, how is that going to affect the hobby shop?
Yeah.
And get an idea of where my racers were and where the hobby shops were and who was racing and who wasn't racing. And that was kind of my first goal. And then I actually reached out to Chad here at Moore, and I said, what is the number, right? If an average, during a regular non-pandemic time, if your average Saturday night is 50 bodies, what is a realistic number for one company to sponsor? Is it 1 out of the 50 people? Is it 10% out of the 50 people? What is that number? Just to kind of get an idea of what, from the hobby shop's point of view, because if we don't have hobby shops and we don't have tracks, there's no need for me being a regional team manager because there is no team. You know what I mean? And so that's something that we've all talked about kind of within, we've had meeting last week with all the regional team managers and Thomas, and we're going to continue to do that at least every month moving forward to work together.
I think TLR had actually been one of the harder companies to be a sponsored driver for. Even, the first show we did of this podcast, I kind of went on a little sponsorship rant, just because from my end, a lot of it had to do with tires, because, the hobby shops are going to make the most money from consumables. So tires, wings, bodies, wraps, we make a 65% markup on body clips, So, I mean, stuff that people are going to go through a lot, that's where the hobby shop can actually make some money and stay open. It's not the entry fees. The entry fees go right back into the track. Or in my case, the entry fees go into paying for me and the track, So when I start seeing sponsorships of shock oil or, not just tires, but stuff like, but shock oil, bodies, pit mats, just these little things that some of these places are willing to kind of give away, which is, I mean, sometimes I give away stuff for our races, but you got to participate in the race in order to get the stuff given away. I guess what I'm saying is, it seemed like for a little while there, the last couple of years, it had gotten really easy to get a great discount or to be on even a chassis sponsorship. But I think that's kind of, to me, it feels like it's sort of swung the other way now, because I know when I told Kevin I was leaving at TLR, he's like, "Are you sure?" Yep, I'm positive. I work at a hobby shop. I'm good. But the implication of that was, you're not going to just be able to get back on if you call me a month from now, because there was a lot to give up there. And I think I've seen that happen. You don't hear about all these guys, coming to the track now and showing me off a box of shock oil that they got for like $10. I don't see that anymore. They're going upstairs and they're buying their shock oil like they're supposed to, You still kind of see it with tires a little bit, but even that I don't think has gotten out of hand like it had been in the past. So it's good to hear that. Go ahead, Will.
There's a lot fewer like tax-free rides, is what I call them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the discount they get is pretty much just the sales tax you get off of paying at the hobby shop for some stuff. So like, yeah, there's other companies. I remember somebody at the track told me they were getting like a 15% deal on a company's tires, and it's like, dude. I feel like a lot of those guys that do that kind of thing don't really last that long. Like, it's more like the guy that's like,
it's frustrating.
Kind of a flash in the pan kind of racer, and then the hardcore guys or the guys that or the core group of guys that you have coming to race. Those are the guys that I think that like they add value, and that's the thing. Like when I think that's the thing, like a lot of companies kind of look at now is like, okay, so we have 50% drivers here, and here. How much value are they adding? And like that's kind of what I like. I have a deal with Associated and J Concepts and Reedy, and I try to, regardless of what somebody's car is, I try to help. I try to add value to my deal because like there's a lot of drivers that don't do that, or like even I feel like maybe selling like having a good car that anybody could try at the track, and and they can go upstairs and buy a kit, like just based off of getting to drive your car. That adds more value than somebody that just won a Worlds or something. Is like the people that are going to be buying new vehicles, they might not even know you could race these cars on a Worlds level. So it's like, I feel like the guys that were getting the kind of the sponsorships that really didn't have a lot of like the tax-free ride type deal, they didn't add a lot of value and they got burned out, and then they kind of go away. So it's like the whole problem kind of worked itself out, I think. Mm-hmm. But now, it's like people are being, or companies are, I hope, are being a little bit more picky on who they choose. And, like all of the sponsorships I have, I never had to turn in a resume, or anything like that. I was always, asked. Or I just, like I was going to leave a team and I asked if I could have a spot again. And, it was no problem. You did a lot of good work for us in the past. Thanks for coming back. No need for a resume. But getting back to the point, it's like the sponsorships that didn't necessarily matter and they kind of hurt the hobby shops. A lot of those kind of went away, and you never hear about a guy with 2 wheel net sponsorships, one for each side of the car type of deal, but that's just me.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So to bring it back, that's good to hear, that you approached, a lot of these places about that. And you talked to Chad, cause, that's really important. I mean, there's this balance of what our hobby has become, of having, sponsorships and just being a hobby. There's this balance that we're trying to find all the time.
Mm-hmm. Club racing is important, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like club racing is very important because not everybody's going to travel. And if they want to, I'm the first guy to say anybody can come with me, from our track, and try to build a group to go with,
Yeah. And kind of getting back to the second part of what Chad said was, it depends on the people who are being sponsored. And not to, I guess, toot my own horn, for the lack of a better term.
Toot.
But he straight up, he straight up said, look, you and Dustin buy very little for me, but you sell far more for me
right
than you would if you were unsponsored and just buying your own stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the help and, the things that we do and the advice that we give when we're at the track directly makes more money for Chad in the hobby shop than if we weren't sponsored and we just bought our stuff. And so it's very much about the people that we're sponsoring not necessarily the amount of people. It needs to be the right people. And I kind of like have like a list jotted down of kind of what I'm looking for, you know, and one of the best things, the highest things on my list is, for a lack of, you know, like if it's a young kid, it's different. You know, like you're not necessarily going to go over to Caden Fuller and ask him to build you a ball diff, but Mike is part of that program, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So like Mike is the knowledge, you know, and so it's a situation where you got to look at the whole picture. But if you're constantly the guy asking, how do I glue my tires, or how do I bleed my shocks, the simple things that the new people don't know how to do, then you're probably not ready to be sponsored, is the way I'm kind of looking at it. You have to be at least knowledgeable enough that somebody that's off the street that have never opened a kit from one of these companies could come up to you and you could explain the correct way how to build everything. You may not be the fastest guy and that type of thing, but you need to have the knowledge to be able to actually help people. And so that's kind of like pretty high on my list, even more so than necessarily the overall speed, because it's the knowledge and making sure that the new people have things built the correct way and will allow them to have the most fun with their new kit. We've all seen people that have came into the hobby shop, bought a brand new 5.0 or B6 or whatever the case may be. They just go put screws into holes. The car could not be built any more incorrectly, and then go watch them do donuts for 3 hours and never come back. And that's like the worst case scenario. We got them to try the hobby, and no one was there to go, hey man, like, I know you're new, but that just doesn't look right. Can I take a look at your car?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's something that's kind of like my minimum thing. Like and I feel like for the most part, at least in my region, everyone that's sponsored by TLR are those people, you know, are willing to reach out and say, hey man, why don't you come over here real quick? And, you know, I've at my track more, it is high grip, but there are still things you can do wrong with your tires. You know, with it being so abrasive, you could burn 5 sets of rears up to 1 set of fronts, because the tool doesn't really burn off front tires, but the customer doesn't know that his front tires have no foam left and they're gummy bears, and that's why the car steers into the ground. You know, on a weekly basis, I'll throw a set of tires to somebody and say, just try these fronts, go make 5 laps, and tell me if it fixes your car. Just so that they have an idea, because they don't know. Like, the tire has tread on it. The tire has tread. It's not worn out. You know what I mean? And on a two-wheel drive, that's huge. The tire choice in the front can make the car the best car in the world or absolutely junk. And it's just, you know, those little things that I need the guys to do.
Yeah, and like your average guy that's just getting into it, maybe run for a year or whatever. You know, like you said, he's going to see there's still tread on the tires, but you tell him his front inserts are blown out, and that's why. You know, they're probably going to be kind of hesitant to spend another $20 on a set of front tires across the shelf. But if you can hook them up, like, hey, try these. Oh man, this is so much better. Let me go buy some tires, and they'll have less reservations about making the change.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
What was Chad's number? Did he give you, or was his answer that answer?
No, his number, with some hesitation, is, you know, I would say no more than 10%.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have 50 bodies in the door, he wouldn't be alarmed if he had 5 of the right people from a company.
Right.
Now, obviously, there's a lot more companies than there used to be, and that's kind of why he put that asterisk is, you know, if it's 5 guys who are the right guys that are helping my regular customers, the other 40, then it's okay. If it's 5 guys who sit over in the corner and act like they're too good to be talked to, and, you know, that's not the right 5 guys. So, you know, I'm definitely trying to keep that in mind when I'm looking at somebody. And right now, and I don't know if maybe it's the right mindset to have, but if someone sends me a resume and, you know, it kind of checks all the boxes, and his home track, his 1 or 2 home tracks, or say 8 scale tracks, and those tracks don't have a hobby shop, which is very common here in Colorado, is the 8 scale tracks are just a track in a field type deal. I would be more willing to support them knowing that they don't run at a hobby shop or at a track with a hobby shop, because, you know, it's not directly affecting them. I think I'm definitely, at least at the beginning, going to make sure I'm a lot more careful when I sponsor somebody who's directly racing at one of these tracks that have a store. Because you're immediately taking, you know, if I sponsor somebody at the Plex, it's directly affecting Alex's sales, either positively because that person may help grow the hobby there, or it could do it negatively because he's going to brag about his, you know, 50-cent shock oil type deal.
Right.
So just trying to be aware of, you know, who we're sponsoring and where is really the biggest key for me.
Well, that's good.
You know, and if they're active, because there's no point in having someone sponsored if they run every 6 months.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, what's the point?
It's not doing anything for them or us.
TLR had a pretty good setup there for a little while, where you would, they had their TLR forum, and we used to, you know, do our, I think it was quarterly race reports on there. I used to be really good at that. And then, like what J Concepts does right now is pretty nice too, because you can just, they'll call, hey, what did you do this week? And then you get on there, and then, you know, every once in a while you get put on the national, you know, Live RC press release, which is kind of cool. You know, we had talked about Thomas, was it a month ago? Maybe when
something like that.
Something like that. It was a while ago.
It was like the day after it happened.
Yeah, and it was like right when the pandemic started too. Maybe it was way back in March. So that'd have been 2 months ago. But we had talked about him because of what he was able to do with Jason at J Concepts, kind of bringing a lot of that over to his new position as the national team manager. So, and I've already seen they do like some live streams and stuff like that now too.
Yeah, and I think some of that was already in the works as far as like Frank's build video and Dunford's build video. And, you know, the one thing that I'm really excited about is that they started posting these things on YouTube where they're like, you can find them again. You know, because Frank and Frank especially has always been really good. I don't remember the last 10 scale kit that re-released that Frank has not built on live from start to finich. Yeah. But when you only post them on Facebook Live, within 2 weeks, you're never finding that thing again. Like, you know, so it's good that we're posting them on YouTube, because 6 months down the road, someone can type in, you know, 22x4 build video, and bam, the whole playlist comes up of building the kit in order, you know, and that type of thing. And I think that's awesome, and it's really good for us.
Yeah.
That reminds. Was it the JRXT that had the video that came with it in the box as the instruction video?
I thought that
how
was
to build the car.
I thought Associated had a VHS it was Jammin' J Halsey's thing or whatever.
Was it? Okay, yeah. Maybe I'm mistaken. I thought Losi had one.
I don't ever remember Team Losi having a video with their vehicle.
Well, yeah, whatever.
Sorry.
Anyway, it reminds me of
that was before my time for sure.
Oh.
Yeah, you're a youngin'.
I used to hang out in the hobby shop and just like drool all over the videos and stuff. I'd buy videos of like how to build an RC car, and I hadn't even had one yet. Because I wanted one so bad.
I still have my 94, 95 Associated videos. My 96 one got eaten by the VCR. Yeah, I was pretty bummed out when that happened.
By the Laserdisc player?
Laserdisc. Dude, when I was a kid, I had an uncle who had a Laserdisc, and I thought that was just like the greatest thing ever.
I have one.
I was like, oh my God, he must have so much money. And he didn't really have that much money. He just had a cool laser. It was Lee. Lee had a Laserdisc back in the 80s.
You know what? You know why I have a Laserdisc player?
No, I don't.
So there's a Beatles movie
Remember,
that was only
show.
released on Laserdisc.
Oh, okay,
and
that
I
makes
have
sense. My mind was going somewhere totally different than that.
No. Okay. It was the only way you could get it, and you still can. I don't believe it's ever been released in any other format.
Really?
Other than the Laserdisc.
That's interesting.
So, anyway.
Huh.
But what were you going to say, Zeke?
I was going to say, so like my first race 10 scale kit, just to kind of give you an era, it was the B4.2 Worlds Edition, like the very last one. That was the first race kit that I had gotten. And Cody Newmandahl actually built that car for me. And I was like brand new to the hobby, right? Like I had raced like 8 scales like 2 or 3 times, met Cody and Larry. And then Larry actually was like, hey, Cody will build you a 10 scale car. Come up to Ditmore, come race. Cody will have it all ready for you. Like, just get your electronics. He'll build the kit, and you just come run. And like, you need to run in the winter because I wasn't planning on running in the winter. And I remember I showed up and kind of got it all set up. And looking back on it, it's actually pretty funny. But I ran for 2 weeks and never put any shock oil in the car. So I remember Cody walked by and he goes, "What oil did you ever put in that? That thing looks thin." And I was like, "What do you mean?
What's shock oil?"
You built me the car." He goes, "Well, yeah, but I just thought you would put oil in it when it was ready. Like I didn't want to leave oil in the shocks and that kind of stuff." And I was like, "No, I just thought it was built, so I went out there. Never set ride high, like I didn't know." And so
we had somebody come into the store this week that bought the Traxxas big bore shocks, the 4-pack, and didn't put shock oil in it. And I was like, "Dude," he's like, "What's wrong with these shocks, man?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I went like, with my hands up and down. I'm like, "Holy crap, there's no oil in this." He's like, "You got to put oil in them?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." So I showed him how to do it. And I reminded him, this guy that we have a how-to on our YouTube channel here that specifically goes over how to replace your oil in your Traxxas shocks. It's like my 6th best video, actually. Pretty happy with that. So that was fun.
Yeah, and people will keep referring to it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the plan. Well, so what do you got? So you're gonna has more started racing then? Did we ask that?